Hey, 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 witches! Do you love the Songs or Spells podcast presented by me, Karlyn King? Hearing about how music industry guests use magic in their lives? Do you want to level up your life using the easy spiritual tips discussed with our amazing guests like Aurora, Idols, and OG Sex Pistol Glenn Matlock? Well, now is the time. I have personally manifested many things like relationships, tuition fees, and even specific podcast guests. Think of me as your personal guide for your spiritual glow up. So what are you waiting for? As Dave Grohl, Billie Eilish, and even Jay-Z knows, yep, they practice this. A weekly bit of witchery does not take long. Join me today in the Patreon community page. You can access it via the link in the show notes, or on our Instagram bio at Songs or Spells Podcast, or on the TikTok bio at Songs or Spells. I can't wait to meet you. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 2, and what an episode it is. I spoke to the wonderful Maya Damaris, who is the lead singer, songwriter and producer in Wax on Water. Now, Maya has also been an industry heavyweight for Universal Music and Universal Pictures. Get ready for a really candid and open chat about her own struggles with clinical depression and the strategies and tools that she uses to manage it, which are, of course, magical. Let's dive in.
I'm the lead singer and main songwriter and producer for Wax on Water. It's a band that I started about 2009 now. And so, yeah, we've been going a little while.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I understand you've got quite a history in the music industry as well.
Yes, so my background, since I was sort of left college, I started immediately. My first job actually was in Tower Records and it was one of my favourite jobs, just working in a record store. And they put me into classical. What I wanted was to kind of be on the rock floor with all the cool rock guys, but they ended up putting me in classical because I was classically trained and was a singer and all the rest of it. So from thinking like, oh God, this is not what I wanted. This is just like being at school. Actually, it was incredible because I got to spend time really thinking about all the different kinds of classical music, everything from things like early music, which is very modal and things like that. And that actually probably has influenced my sort of arrangement style, certainly, And then after that, really, I went quite quickly into Universal Music. I worked in a number of record companies, but Universal Music was one of my absolute favourite jobs because essentially they gave me the Universal catalogue and said, go off and, create reissues, do vinyl, do this, that and the other. And I'm a music geek, and I had, since I was, very young, I was obsessed with my mother's she was into Motown and all the kind of classic areas of music. So she very much introduced me to blues. So I think my sort of formative influences in music was my grandfather, because I'm Serbian Orthodox, which is similar to Russian Orthodox. And so I'm not particularly religious, but my grandfather was. And one of my early memories I remember is listening to Serbian music, the Serbian Orthodox music. And again, that's something which I think has really stayed with me. And there's a lot of drama in the music. It's very beautiful. Very spiritual, but very beautiful. So that's one of my earliest memories of music, and thinking, oh wow, this is an expression of something else. And then with my mother, and she was sort of showing me Motown and the blues singers and people like Dinah Washington. I sort of, as soon as I heard Dinah Washington, I thought, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. But I don't know how I'm going to, because her voice is so magnificent. Yeah. But the way that she sang and emoted, pain and suffering, but still created a beauty to it, was something I think that really stayed with me. And so I was sort of voracious in listening to all types of music, from classical. I love jazz and blues. I kind of went through a bit of a jazz phase early on, just before I discovered rock music as a kid, really. And I remember asking my grandparents, one of my first records was, I'd kind of heard about Charlie Parker, and I wanted to learn saxophone. That was my thing at the time, because I was already playing piano. And they bought me a Charlie Parker album, and just thinking, God, this is something completely different again. You've got Dinah Washington over there and greats like Aretha Franklin, and then you've got sort of what's going on in jazz, and it's completely different to classical, but it's just, we all informs each other, you know. And that was very exciting. So really those was my first influences. So when I got the job at Universal and they said, here you go, here's a catalogue, and it was my job to go through the Motown catalogue or the Island catalogue, Reggae Greats and Lee Scratch Perry, and as well as kind of classic 60s and 70s. It was just, dream job. I couldn't believe I was getting paid to listen to and put my thoughts into creating records. So that was kind of really kind of the real starting point of my sort of music career, because I just had a chance to sit there and sort of imbibe all these incredible sounds and really learn from the greats. This is how you do it,
Yeah, that's fantastic. So your job was to put together like the track listings and things like that.
And the artwork and everything. Yeah, and so that's I think something which I think, and I often wonder, obviously I've had that background and I'm a sort of self-starter artist, how if you haven't got all these independent artists out there, how would they know how to go about mastering and the artwork concept and how you get the best out of a designer or things like that. So, but I think by the time that I hit Universal, I very much decided that I'd been writing a little bit in my bedroom since I was 10, 11, on the piano. But it was nothing that you could kind of fit together and say that's a pop song. I was never that into sort of normal pop music, like I say, Motown pop, if you can call it that. I think it's genius, that's something much more. So I kind of knew at Universal that I wanted to write, and so it was a case of how do I actually create my sound. And I think that, well, going back a little bit, when I first sort of discovered rock music, probably... Well, first things, actually, I went through a stage in my early teens, where I come from, there was very much, I was in the goth subculture.
Yeah.
I'm a blonde goth, okay, because I didn't have black hair, but it was all about The Cure and Depeche Mode and that kind of vibe, because that's Essex, where I'm from. That's very much the vibe. And I absolutely loved that. But then there was this other sort of side that sort of came in, and I thought, well, I was really into sort of like retro, going to vintage shops and buying my clothes and going to flea markets and sort of looking for vinyl and old vinyl and records. I just think, that sounds interesting. I've heard a little bit about that. So I think one of the first things I found was some dogged cassette tape that I found at a flea market of like a Joni Mitchell record. It was For the Roses. And I remember seeing her on the cover because she had long blonde hair, and I just thought, she kind of looks like me in terms of this is somebody I can relate to, because what my concept of rock music was kind of these big hairy guys, and it's like, well, I can't do that. So she was really important. Her voice was very, very, sweet and beautiful, but also her lyrically, she is such an incredible storyteller. And I think that she's one of my icons for that. When I come to writing, she really is somebody who influences me massively. So kind of from Joni Mitchell, I sort of explored more and more, and then kind of discovered Led Zeppelin, and it was like, and because up to that point, and I'm sure you're the same, that you only really tend to hear a couple of Led Zeppelin tracks on the radio. You hear Stairway to Heaven, and honestly, it's my least favourite Zeppelin track. I mean, maybe because it's been so overplayed, but you actually get into. I remember hearing Led Zeppelin 1 and 2, and I was just I literally don't think I listened to anything else that much more for about 2-3 years. I was just like, oh, this is incredible, consummate musicianship. There's no weak link in that band. Every single one, and you could keep listening to it. You keep going back to it, and you find something else in where John Bonham's playing, or Robert Plant's vocals, exceptional. So yeah, Led Zeppelin. So that was in my teen years, and I really thought I would love to do rock music, but me as who I am, how is that going to pan out? So the gothic side kind of seemed a little bit more like, okay, that's probably more something that I can kind of go down that route. But then went to Universal Music and sort of saw an even bigger range of artists and thought, well, I think I just have to really focus on my songwriting, So yeah, that's kind of how it started, really.
Amazing. So how did you get from there then to now? You're almost at your second album, is that right?
I've just started. The second album's coming out now, and I'm working on my third. Right. I think that I was writing a little bit, but I really couldn't quite find the mode to pull it together. And also, it's quite scary when you first start writing, because you really are putting a part of yourself out there. And I think that I also at that time I started having like pretty bad depression. I'd often been depressed when I was a bit younger, but certainly around the universal time, I was really starting to dip badly, and I was thinking, oh, just need to kind of find a way of kind of getting through. And writing actually was the kind of cathartic way for me to express how I was feeling. I couldn't work out what was going on, and I just know that I was kind of nosediving. And so initially it was, I thought, well, you don't have to release this, you know, this is just for you. But it was a way of really expressing feelings which I felt sort of was squashed down. And that's actually where the name Wax and Water came up with that, because I felt that the idea, sort of the visual picture of, you know, wax, which is like a sealant, and then water underneath, you know, and that's all the emotions and everything that's going on, and the wax is there. And really it's about trying to break through and personal growth. And that's what Wax and Water is. It's about, as I also said, trying to make the ugly beautiful. Wow. Both in myself and in the world around me, trying to explain the world to myself. And so really, I started writing, doing that. I had a very bad time with depression, and started doing actually one of the things that was very, very helpful at that time. I started doing meditation a lot. Transcendental meditation, you know, Buddhist meditation. I found a book in a I should know, somebody gave me that book. It was a David Lynch book actually about transcendental meditation, Swimming with the Fishes. Yeah. And I was at that point really starting to feel like things are getting really, really tough mentally. I love my job and what's going on, but I'm not sure how to shift, you know, what's going on inside. So transcendental meditation was fantastic in terms of, you know, shifting on the core level, allowing thoughts to come to the surface rather than squashing things down. And hey, if you're going to be a writer and you say, I'm going to do Wax on Water and I'm going to express, you know, try and find a higher truth, then you're going to have to allow those things to come to the surface and channel them. And that's really scary.
Really scary, yeah.
It's really scary, and that's why I have a lot of sympathy with anybody who's going through, my God, we've just been through a pandemic, and that was pretty awful for everybody, wasn't it? But people that, you know, the loneliness and people struggling to come to terms with things that have gone in their life. Everything's relative, and what's traumatic to one person, other people can kind of deal with better. But we've all got things that we kind of need to channel in a better way. So I started writing in earnest around that time. The depression was getting worse and worse, to the point where I thought I completely stopped drinking for about 3 years. I was really trying hard not to go on antidepressants and trying to do it naturally and do it through foods and stuff like that. And then I just thought, right, you know what? I don't want to go out because I feel completely miserable. You know, I'd had all the party stuff. I'd done all that, you know, when I first started the music business. I'm just going to do something that makes me feel like there is a reason to be on this planet, because right now I feel that I've got a lovely life, I've got a lovely flat, I've got a car, I've got all those things, and I'm not happy. I'm just not happy. And so I started writing the first album really properly, Procession, and I always would describe that as sort of the sound of a soul coming out of a tar pit, because it was literally trying to write myself out of depression. And it takes time to work out your arrangement style. And at that time I remember listening to, I mean, I love Nine Inch Nails. Trent
amazing.
Absolutely amazing. And you know, in the same way with Joni Mitchell on the lyric side, Trent Reznor is not only on the production side absolutely incredible and amazing musician and great pianist, but his lyrics, they're kind of amazing, really, in terms of, particularly if you think about a guy in sort of, you know, industrial rock music.
Vulnerability. Yeah,
you know, there's so much posturing that goes on in rock music, and it's very male. And then this guy comes out and he's singing songs and basically saying, I'm completely hurting, and totally showing vulnerability, which I think if you want to be a successful artist, you have to be able to show that, and that is the scary thing, you know. So, and I remember at that time particularly, I think it was around With Teeth album, which I think is Nine Inch Nails, a very underrated album actually, and just one of those songs, there's a song called Right Where It Belongs, and it's, you know, in terms of writing, really efficient in terms of it's a small sort of repeating pattern, and the lyric is just beautiful, and production, of course, is exceptional. And it talks about just literally being in a place and feeling trapped by where you are. And I completely related to that album. So that was a big influence, I think, around that time. And I went to work on Procession album and just thought, okay, let's give yourself something that you can channel all your thoughts through, but also create something musically that you want to listen to. And really, that's kind of where I started honing my production style. I like big loud guitars. I love the synthesizers. I'm a pianist, so I love to play keyboards as well. And my style sort of evolved from there, really, and lyrically it evolved. So by the time I got to this record, which I started writing probably, I think in August 2018, maybe 2019, and then sort of finished it in the pandemic. Right. And then so again, there's some aspects of that which is a throwback to that sort of period. So I mean, the EP that's out now, which is EP2 of The Drip, one of the songs on there, I have to say I am nervous about having out in public, because it's my version of, if you like, not a cover, my version of Right Where It Belongs. It's called Done Me, and it's really about describing that time, having, years later, having gone on antidepressants, having dealt with a lot of stuff, that really looking back at how, difficult that time was, and how sad and lonely you feel. And so I remember when I was writing, I tend to leave lyric writing to the end. When I'm writing a song, like at the moment, I'm making myself write everything on guitar, and then I'll just sing a vocal line over it, and I'll sort of sing, rubbish but vocal sounds, and then every now and then a word just naturally pops out and it kind of gives a shape to it. And then I put off as long as possible writing the lyrics, because you have to dig even deeper and do that. And I do remember for Done Me that hearing the lyrics back, and it sort of came quite quickly in terms of almost like a stream of consciousness, and actually being taken aback and actually cried listening to that, because I was like, oh my God, that was a bad time. That was a bad time. So yeah, I feel a little bit vulnerable about releasing that track. But I've said Wax and Mortar at the beginning about making what's ugly beautiful. It's about making things, reaching towards your higher self. So I would be a hypocrite if I didn't put that out there. Yeah. So
that's astonishing then, how vulnerable your journey has been, and I just want to thank you straight away for being so open and honest about your experiences, because I think that really, it just makes the listeners feel seen and heard, and we just need that so much more than ever. Really.
Thank you. That's kind of, but for that very reason, that when I was growing up and listening to a Cure album, 17 Seconds, that album is one of my favorites. It was really important that I could hear artists feeling the same way as me. That is really, really important. And one of a few good things from the pandemic is that people are talking about mental health, and they're talking about those issues. And I'm not going to shy away from that, whether people think it's attractive or not to talk about those issues. I'm not going to shy away from that, because it's that kind of oh no, you shouldn't talk about that. That's exactly what I'm against. You should absolutely discuss the things that we all go through. Most people will go through at one time or another.
Yeah. So would you say that, first of all, kind of how did it manifest for you? Was it the sort of things that we hear about, not being able to get out of bed? Was it you went off all food, stuff like that?
So the first things that I noticed, I always thought that the worst part of depression was when I used to get up in the morning, going to a job that I loved, and would get into the shower and start crying for no reason. And I was like, why am I crying? Why am I crying? And I'm not a crier. I do not. That's what I know, that if I'm going down that route, that's really bad. Started losing a lot of just interest. One of the things I sort of think about, saying to a friend of mine, she was laughing. One of the things about my head is that I wish that everybody could be in my head when I'm on, in my vibe and I'm flowing. And the world, the colours in the world are incredible, and everything is so beautiful. And I just feel complete joy and love. And then some days it's like a horror movie, and it's just whoa, the shutters come down and there is no colour in the world. It is literally I can't hear properly, not physically, as in I can't hear things in the way that I would hear it. So it's like this shutting down, So the first part of the depression was very much, like I say, crying in the morning, and then just feeling like everything was starting to shut down, and that you're just not able to enjoy life fully. And literally the only thing that I could connect to was music. That was honestly saved my life and got me through, you know. The second part of the depression was when I started to get some help then there was no crying. It was like a complete nothingness, complete stillness. And that's when I went to do transcendental meditation, actually. And that, I think, did shift and helped a little bit. And I did St. John's wort and things like that. But it took a lot of effort to come through that, you know. It did. And as I would just say to anybody who is going through that, or knows somebody who's going through it, is just know that you are loved and you can come through it, and there is help out there. Yeah. There's lots of places, and my family were phenomenal. I'm very, very close to my family, and my mother was, you know, it's pretty genetic, and a lot of people in my family have depression, have dealt with it, and so having them and their support was incredibly important. So after that, you know, I started to get a bit better, and colours. Other things I used to sort of come up with sort of ways of trying to counteract the kind of closing mood, and so I would make myself. I mean, exercise is important in terms of just walking. So I mean, that's when I went through I love David Bowie, but there was sort of two particular albums at that time. There was Low and Heroes, and I think I'm such like an obsessive listener, so I listen to things on loop. Yeah. And I used to walk around London just with David Bowie on, from Heroes to Low, and I'd make myself look for 5 beautiful things, even if I couldn't feel that. Just I'd make myself look at the world, and you know that light that's in Great Britain generally. You know, that kind of grey low light. Oh. It's so difficult, which is why I like coming to America, because it's like there's sunshine, you know. But I would just make myself look for 5 beautiful things or 5 interesting things if I was really struggling that day. And I think it's like kind of building up your pathways in a way of just kind of resilience of, okay, I can get through this, you know. So yes, it started to ease. I did all the necessary things I had to do. I did end up going on antidepressants because it was getting to a stage where I was worried that I wouldn't do something stupid to myself. So, yeah. And I think that if you're in that situation, it's going on for a protracted period of time, then it's no good. So being an antidepressant, it's not for everybody, but you know, it certainly helped in terms of it rewires your brain effectively. So that was one part of it. But I think it's important, I would say personally, it's not just, I'll take a medicine and get rid of it. It's about channeling and dealing with the person, about good eating, about all the other things that go around it, and also just finding an outlet. Keep coming back to having an outlet. It's not just like, even if people just want to have a hobby of art or whatever it is, you know, just something creativity. I believe creativity is like a higher power in itself, you know.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, so just by engaging with art and expression and things like that, and getting a chance to think about what does that mean to you, what does that mean in your life, I think those things are all part of the picture of how you can pull yourself out of a bad place.
Yeah. And do you feel like the people, you said your family were really good, but were there other people around you who maybe you didn't want to tell, or who just didn't get it?
Yeah, I kind of cut myself off from quite a few people who I knew that was very much, you know, a great party scene. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to be up for going out, drinking and having fun and all the rest of it. It's quite lonely if you're feeling really depressed to be in an environment where everybody's like, yay, everything's great. And you're just, sometimes it can buoy you up a little bit, but then you can go home and feel even more lonely. So I did some culling. I cut out the people in my life who I think probably didn't really, you know, didn't care about me as a person. You're just another person in the group, and who cares, and all the rest of it. And around that time, that's when I moved up to Camden, and it was like a completely physical move, was also reflected by, you know, the new friendships that formed. And around that time, so I sort of I was coming up to release my first album, and I was then moved over to Universal Pictures film studio. And music business at that point was kind of like digital coming in, so it was a nightmare. And money, what's going to happen with money for everybody, pretty much is what's happening now. And film business was still big business and all the rest of it. So I went to Universal Pictures and met just some of the loveliest people who are really my great friends to this day. Wow. So yeah, it was kind of like a change physically in Camden. It was a change in terms of my friendship, my surroundings, and it was a kind of a coming back out of that sort of hole where I sort of found myself.
Yeah. I mean, do you think, I know that you said that there were genetic factors as well, but do you think the music industry was to blame at all?
No, I don't. I think that it's a personal journey. I think that it wouldn't be music. I would say I think there's probably a lot of people. You're doing a job. You're successful in your 20s, early 20s, and you've got all the money, this, that, and the other, and you think I should be 100% happy. You know, there's that, and then you combine that with actually a genetic predisposition maybe towards depression, you know, and things are going on. So I think that that's not like, oh, it's the music industry. I mean, music industry is tough in a way, but I've never felt that I shouldn't be in the industry. I'm not an imposter, you know, because I know my stuff. I know my music. I live for my music. So it's an industry I love, really. And when you come across like-minded people, whether that's on, you know, the side I'm on now, or artists, or actually, you know, in record labels, the people who are there for the right reasons and who are just completely really into it for the right reasons.
We interrupt this broadcast with Spellcast. This is your astrology for the week ahead. So we had the beautiful full moon last week and you were probably emotional. That is now waning. You will feel that changing now as the trine between Venus and Jupiter is a perfect aspect. You might feel more friendly, warm, graceful, and even idealistic. It is a great time for love and romance, feeling comfortable and indulging in sensory pleasures. So maybe book yourself a massage and treat yourself. Now back to my interview with Maya.
So then Wax on Water comes into the world.
Burst into the world.
Burst into the world. This is great. And you work with a really interesting guitar player, is that right?
Yes. So on the first album, I played guitars, and you know, I'm the first to admit I'm not the world's greatest guitarist. I'm a decent pianist and hopefully decent singer, but I like writing on guitar, but I'm not a shredder. I can't do all the fancy stuff, but I'm really about kind of the nuts and bolts. This is how the song structure should be, so that I can then put production and arrangement around that. Yeah. And so for the first album, I auditioned a number of people. I just could not find the right person. I knew what I wanted, and that person wasn't coming. I thought, I'm gonna have to play the guitars myself, which was painful, really painful, you know, literally painful, like bleeding fingers painful, like, oh my God, I'm really gonna have to knuckle down and do that. So I did that for the first album, and I thought, I've got to find the right person. And literally, I mean, his name is Stephen Blessing, and he literally is a blessing. It makes me laugh. Just the best name ever. He came along and I found him, and the first conversation we had, I always come back to, you sort of say, well, what kind of influences, what are you into? And he said to me, 70s rock and grunge music, that's where it's at. And I was like, you are the man. Because that is exactly where, in terms of the guitar sound, and I was evolving to, that I was like, this is where I want to go. So I think that we kind of really meshed in that way. Excuse me. We meshed in that way, and he really has brought something special to the table. He's exceptionally talented, and and a lovely person, and it makes a difference, because, you know, bands are a weird thing that your personalities have to get on as well. You know, it's like this sort of weird family, and he's just a very lovely, talented guy, and has just brought so much to this record. And so the song that's out, the focus track for the EP today, The Wrong Way, is one of my favorite tracks on the album, actually. I think because what Steve has done on it in terms of guitars, it's got that kind of slightly 70s to the playing, but it's just, he's got a lyrical sort of quality to his playing, which I absolutely love. So yeah, he's a keeper. He's a keeper, is our Steve.
Blessing.
Oh, blessing. He's a blessing.
It does sound then that, like, you are quite spiritual. You said that you don't really have a religion as such.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I say that, like I say, I'm born Serbian Orthodox. My grandfather was religious, and I went to a convent school, you know. So I sort of, and I definitely, I say I'm not religious. I totally and utterly support and believe in the precepts that come with religion on the basic level. You know, kindness and being a decent human being and living in love, and all those things are incredibly important, and what I live my life by. So in that aspect, yes, I would say I take that from religion, but then when I look at it, organized religion, I can't help but come back to think this is the major cause of all the issues in the world, pretty much, all the persecution around the world is because you don't believe in the God that I believe in, and I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
A decent person is a decent person, doesn't matter what religion you are or what you look like. So that's why I think the word religious is a funny one, because for me it pertains to organized religion.
Yeah.
But so spiritual is a much better word, to be a decent person, have integrity. God, that's few and far between in the music industry, I have to say. But when you find those people and you're like, oh yeah, breath of fresh air.
So your spiritual practices then would be things like transcendental meditation, obviously writing, lyrics, getting things down on paper. We might call that journaling.
Absolutely. I mean, lyric writing, like I say, is the most cathartic
part
of the process. And, because when I'm writing music, that's just the kind of deep joy of flow. You're just flowing, and you kind of just, you've got thoughts, and I don't know where they come from, but they just come and they make sense. And it's great to play something and just know, oh, that's going to work with that, and I can hear how the bass is going to be or the arrangement. But lyrics, I think, is a channeling in a different way, and it's really about and it is like akin to transcendental meditation. It's about the bubbles coming up of things that your conscious mind is sort of going, no, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about this. But your subconscious is saying, well, we kind of need to talk about this. So it's the power of growth, and I think that's being spiritual is about wanting to move towards enlightenment and have that power of growth as a human being. If we all stay the same in the same way with the same problem, what kind of life is that? A life well lived, I think, is moving towards having worked through the hard times, because everybody has the hard times, and hopefully good times as well. But
it's about learning and growing from those lessons. It's always trying to teach you something.
Absolutely.
If you can't see that at that point, completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that you said look for 5 things. So that's just like gratitude practice, and I mean that is hard science. There's hard science that does move out of your brain. Yeah. I
think so. Yes, I think that is really about the appreciation for that you're not the thing about, particularly if you're in funk or you're in major depression or anger or any of those kind of low grade emotions that come with depression. You are completely myopic. You are completely focused on yourself. It's for the cause. And I hate the idea that I'm so wrapped up in myself that you can't see what other people are going through and have empathy for other people, or just regard the rest of the world and think there are beautiful things. Other things exist apart from my state, That it's almost like a distraction technique, actually, which I think is quite helpful. Yeah, I think it's important. It's important to look. I mean, you think about what's going on in the world right now between Ukraine and Afghanistan and all these terrible, terrible images you see on the news. I mean, how lucky we are in Great Britain or the United States or one of the countries where we don't have on our doorstep that kind of conflict, that kind of turmoil. Coming from a Serbian background, my mother was effectively an immigrant to the UK, came when she was about 10 years old because they were fleeing from the communists, the Russian invasions, and then of course the Second World War and stuff like that. So I know from personal kind of listening to her what she went through, my grandmother went through, my grandfather did, what life could be like, that you don't have freedom, and the kind of, particularly the freedom of speech, it's one thing to be suffering, but the freedom of speech, to be able to express it. So how lucky am I to be able to express my opinions and not think, oh, I shouldn't say that because I'm not allowed to. Me thinking being scared because it's a bit vulnerable is one thing, but I'm not allowed to express things. In some countries, that's a very different thing. So I'm incredibly grateful, and I don't take it lightly that, the freedom of speech that I have, as an artist.
Yeah. And so do you spend half of your time in the US, or do you live in the US?
No, I don't live in the US. I live in the UK. I was, after the pandemic, where of course we were all grounded for 2 years, I was like, I need some sun. I need some sun. So, and I do like to write. So particularly, I thought I'll come out here for a month or so and just finish writing the 3rd album. It's a great way to just be kind of focused on that. So, this is just really kind of holiday time, effectively, and just, writing time to myself and sunshine time. Yeah. Yeah, but no, I live in London. I live in London, but I do travel an awful lot. So yeah, I don't really live anywhere that much. I sort of always hopping around.
That sounds great. Yeah. So the third album is in the works then, you said.
Very much in the works, very much in the works. And yeah, I'm really excited about it, actually. It's a move on again. And like I said, I've kind of gone about the writing process in a different way this time, because on the sort of second album, the Drip one coming out now, I kind of would do a bit of guitar, sort of think I'll write a riff, but then I'll start putting the production around it. And I think that actually sort of was probably not the best way to do it, because it kind of slowed down the kind of the songwriting structure development. So this one, I'm, like I say, I'm making myself, I'm not, because for me it's very easy to do arrangement. I love arrangement. That is the easiest part of the process. You know, I want to put strings, but it's like kid in the candy store, you know, it's like, oh, there's strings and there's this incredible industrial sound over there, and you know, all that sort of stuff. And I think distracted, and I think that what I was like, okay, you have to come back to the song now, come back to the song and make myself do it on an acoustic guitar as well, because usually I would play, I've got a beautiful Gibson Les Paul, I've got a beautiful Fender Telecaster, and I'm just like, no, you're not going to have all those things. You're just going to play it on a really basic acoustic, and if it sounds good on that, it will sound even better when you give it to Steve to play, because he's really good. Yes. So yeah, and I'm kind of, and it's been nice being here, actually being in LA, and I'm really getting back into like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Wow.
I've been, when you go away and you just sort of like, there's a certain couple of records that you kind of have on repeat and stuff. And Deja Vu album, I'm just completely obsessed with at the moment, and marveling over sort of the songwriting talents there. It's been really good, and I've been sort of just allowing that all to come out. And I kind of lyrically, I've left it to the end, but I will do them. But I think this time with the lyrics, that I might do more storytelling aspect as well. I mean, everything will have an element of me in it, but I think it just reflects a different place where I am mentally.
So would you say that you are recovered, or where would you say you're at now?
I think that, I mean, the antidepressants definitely nixed the depression. The problem is with antidepressants, when you have to go on major doses of them, that it takes off the top and the bottom of joy, as well as sadness. And somebody who lives for the kind of vibing and writing and this is beautiful in the world, and that excitement, it dulls the experience, and that is in itself not very nice to go through. But if it's necessary, it's necessary. So, and it has rewired, and I definitely don't have I mean, I was just like that before, roller coaster. I had been since I was a teenager, really, in terms of the up and down moods. You know, it's wearing, it's tiring to be that up and down, you know. So no, I'm definitely, I do have high and I do have low, but the low is nowhere near where I know it could be. And I kind of have put all these learnings around myself and how to manage myself in that way. And writing is a massive part of that for me, you know. Even if I'm not releasing stuff, like I pretty much task myself to write a song every day. That's what's in my list of things to do. So they're not all going to make it on the record, of course not, but it's just it's a form of expression. It's a form of expression and connection to the universe, without sounding like a total hippie. But
totally on board with that.
Expression about the universe, and as well as myself and my place within it, and that's the best way I can describe why I write.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a little witch in you, definitely.
Ooh, spooky. Oh yeah, for sure. There'll be my goth side coming out. Yeah.
You're so interesting.
Oh, thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you.
You kind of feel like a force of the universe. I bet you're incredible in your role at Universal and everything. I can just imagine you being a total boss at work.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Well, possibly I am a slightly bossy, but no. I mean, in terms of passion, I think that I know I'm very much driven by my passions. I've known since I was a young child, that music is what I want to do, and it's been a long journey, you know, long journey. And but passion for me, I mean, people that are just blah and like, oh yeah, you know. Those are not my people. That's not my tribe. You know, and I love sort of, you know, talking about music with people that are kind of interested and have their own take on it and interpretation. That's one of the things that makes me feel alive, actually. So
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a passion that kind of keeps you alive, and that's the kind of main thing that I hope I'll always be like, always focused on my music, because that's as fun as I think about it most of the time. It's my main modus operandi, is to get up and think about music, and well, what could I do today? Because it makes my day brighter. It makes me happy as a human being. I'm happy as a human being now, and I know what it's like to be not happy at all, and long old journey, but God, it's a lot better on the other side. Experience is a great thing sometimes.
Have you ever thought about doing a book about your experience through depression?
I wouldn't shy away from it. I think that I always sort of said, if Wax and Water became successful and to a certain level, what I would be focused on is actually something to do more with working with particularly teenage groups in terms of depression management, situational management. I think that that's something that I would be interested in, working with organisations that do something. So in terms of a book, maybe that would come as part of that, in terms of talking to people. I certainly would like to reach out to people that have gone through or are going through similar experiences to me. If nothing else, to say, you can get through this, you can do that, So, but yeah, no, I mean, if that time came, I would certainly, if I was going to do it, as with everything Wax and Water, I would do it 100% honestly. So it would have to be completely unabridged. This is the real situation, and maybe it's a bit soon to go through absolutely everything, but I definitely would.
Yeah. I would definitely read that. Definitely.
Oh, thank you. Right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
Being so open and honest and vulnerable and sharing your experiences. I just can't wait to see what the next album brings as well, in terms of that.
Thank you. It's been really lovely to talk to you. And I love the idea of your podcast. It's great. We should talk more about these things, the things that drive us and make us excited about life, So thank you for having me on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maya is a powerhouse of a person. Her strength in learning to manage her mental health conditions and still be very creative, productive and driven is truly inspirational. I've never tried transcendental meditation, but I do know that a lot of artists do use it. For example, Simon Neil from Biffy Clyro. So I'm really going to look into it. I use good old YouTube meditation. I love that you can look up a specific meditation depending on how you feel that day, like meditation for anxiety, for manifesting, for the full moon, or whatever it is you're feeling that day. But I'm definitely going to look into transcendental because it's clearly effective for some people. Thank you for listening, and remember to follow us on Instagram at Songsarespells Podcast, on TikTok at songsarespells, and click the link in the bio to join the Patreon community for your witchy glow up. This podcast has been hosted and produced by me, Karlyn King, with music from the Caledonias. See you next week.